Chapter 14. On board the TARDIS, it seemed at first that nobody could think of any way of following Sarah. Certainly Jeremy had no opinion to offer. He just had to trust that the Doctor would eventually come up with some notion of how to get out of the hole he had dug for himself and the others. "The only course that seems to offer any hope is to go back to Earth," the Doctor said at last. "I can't see any alternative," said the Brigadier. "But how does that offer any hope? It's more like giving up." "We could start again, with the psychotelemeter focused on some artifact from Paracon that Freeth has taken to Earth, if we can identify one. He and his friends seem to have gone native. We don't want the TARDIS to end up in Fortnum and Mason's." "And if we do go home," said Jeremy, "I could grab another pair of shoes." "What did you say?" said the Brigadier, his concentration broken. "Well, I can't go wandering round the jolly old universe like Diddle Diddle Dumpling, now can I?" "What are you talking about?" said the Brigadier, quite exasperated. "My son John," said Jeremy, equally exasperated. "You know the nursery rhyme?" The Doctor's face was alight. "Eureka!" it announced to the world. "Of course," he said, diving for the controls. "Stuck in the mud outside the door. Thank you, Jeremy. That's the answer." "My shoe?" As the Doctor ran through the opening door, an almighty bang blew smoke and smatters of mud into the TARDIS. "Good grief," said the Brigadier. "Come back! You can't go out there!" But before he could follow, they heard the Doctor cry out, "Got it!" And moments later he dived back through the door, clutching Jeremy's shoe. "Oh, super!" said Jeremy, as the Doctor tossed it to him and closed the door. "And what's more to the point," said the Doctor, rubbing the mud off an object in his hand. "What is it?" said the Brigadier. "What have you got there?" The Doctor took the object over to his bench and began to wash it clean. "From the way that the soldier was cursing it, I'd say that Paracon is involved up to its eyes in this war. And knowing how our friend Freeth operates—" "They supplied the arms!" cried the Brigadier. "More than likely. So, a lump of shrapnel in the focus of the psychotelemeter." The Doctor held up a piece of jagged metal, carried it over to the control column, and carefully placed it on the little platform in the centre of the telemeter circuit. He activated the TARDIS. And with a bit of luck... Clever stuff, thought Jeremy, lacing up his shoe as the trumpeting started again. The President's Palace of the Paracon Head of State, who was, after all, the titular leader of an entire planet, was considerably less palatial than might have been expected. A large house, certainly, but nevertheless a straightforward dwelling of simple, balanced lines, sitting in an open green park surrounded by high walls. It seemed to offer a smiling welcome to the Doctor and his companions. Their arrival on the planet had created something of a problem. The appearance of a strangely shaped blue box in the centre of a manufacturing complex, which would have made the Ruhr Valley of Nazi Germany look like Toy Town, stimulated a full-scale security alert. However, the emergence of the mission from the United Nations of the planet Earth, from inside their curious spaceship, reduced the problem to one of protocol. In the absence of the chairman and the vice-chairman of the corporation, it was apparently decided to follow the usual procedure for dealing with representatives of other worlds. Of course, it was clear that they were heavily, if discreetly, under the guard of their courteous escort in the distinctive purple uniforms of the corporation security service. Even after they had left the purple fly car, which had landed in the palace grounds and, at the entrance to the palace itself, were handed over to the presidential guard, who were wearing a dark green, far more restful to the eye, they were never left alone. Even when they reached the president himself, which entailed working their way through a hierarchy of increasingly grand functionaries, the captain of the guard remained within earshot. The president, as yellow and dry as the page of an ancient paperback, was clearly very old indeed. Sitting in a high-tech wheelchair, which seemed as much a life support system as a means of conveyance, he nevertheless was clearly in full control of his faculties. Indeed, when the doctor, with many an apology, explained how a member of the mission, through an unfortunate misunderstanding, was travelling with Vice President Tragan, the uncertainty of age quite vanished, and he became a model of command. Dispatching the captain to meet her, he assured them that she would be perfectly safe in the hands of the vice-chairman. Perfectly safe, he repeated, emphatically. Now, why should he find it necessary to say that? Thought the brigadier, and noticed with alarm that the doctor seemed as worried as he felt. What Sarah had expected to find, when she stepped out of the spaceship, she was not quite sure. But she hadn't anticipated finding herself standing under a cloudless blue sky in a beautiful flower-filled garden. Leaving Crestin to deal with the two animals, Tragan gestured to Sarah to precede him down the steps of the landing pad onto a wide path paved with marble. As she walked down the long winding path, Sarah began to feel that the vista wasn't so beautiful after all. On each side were banks of strange, fleshy blooms, some of which, with a simulacrum of teeth in the centre, seemed almost to be grinning at her. It was a kaleidoscope of rich, discordant colours, backed by swirling shrubs and the tangled foliage of thick, squat trees. Although there was only a gentle breeze, everything in sight was in constant, edgy motion, almost as if the vegetation was on a wary lookout. The largest collection of alien life forms in the whole of Paracon, murmured Tragan behind her. I'd advise you to keep to the centre of the path, he added. Why? What do you mean? She asked, and immediately had her answer. A small creature, the size of a squirrel or small cat, darted from the undergrowth and tried to cross the path. But two plants with blooms like giant orchids swooped down, and both grabbed it in their mouths. The flowers' contest for their screaming capture was soon settled by a natural judgment of Solomon. The disputed prey split down the middle, a final squeal abruptly cut off, and the plants resumed their former positions. The excited flurry of movement around them settled down, and all that could be heard was the sound of chewing. Sarah had stopped short. As Tragan impelled her onwards with a hand on her shoulder, she was gasping for air to keep herself from throwing up. The path going round a bend, a high stone wall was revealed, with an ornate archway containing a heavy gate. As they approached the gate, which Sarah had expected to swing open, it slid sideways into the wall. Another push between her shoulders, and she walked through the arch, and nearly fell over. She appeared to be on a narrow walkway or bridge, with no sides, thousands of feet in the air. As she heard the door close behind them, she saw that in fact she and Tragan were in a transparent tube, leading from the top of an enormous building to the uppermost floor of another even larger, and each building was perched precariously, or so it felt, oh how precarious it felt, on the top of a long stalk or tower. She realized with a jolt that the garden, extensive as it was on the roof of a structure which would dwarf the most colossal skyscraper ever built on Earth. Even though she now knew it was safe, it was all that Sarah could do to cross the 20 yards or so to the other side without dropping to her hands and knees. Beneath her feet, far below, she could see busy roads crisscrossed by elevated flyovers, no less busy, with small fly cars buzzing in and out and under like a swarm of gnats. So high was she that she felt as if she were flying herself. Even the rest of the vast cityscape spread out on either side was beneath her, for none of the buildings, large as they were, could compare in height with the gargantuan twin towers of Fortress Tragan? Welcome to, what did you call it? Fortress Tragan, said her host, gesturing to her to go through the door at the other end of the bridge. Very appropriate, he added. She went through the door, across a small anonymous lobby, and into a vaulted hall as luxurious and impersonal as the palazzo of a Renaissance prince. Heavy tapestries showed scenes of alien battle, with the appearance of some of the combatants as far from the comparative normality of Trajan's as his was from Sarah's. Large humanoid statues echoed the theme of combat and bloodshed, some even representing episodes of torture, from which Sarah quickly averted her eyes. Thick, strangely patterned carpets intermittently softened the ring of their footsteps as they advanced across the marble floor. "This is your home?" she said unbelievingly. "It is. Good heavens above. This building is the headquarters of the entertainments division of the Paracon Corporation, of which I am vice chairman. I live over the shop, so to speak." They had arrived at a smaller chamber set back from the main room, furnished as sumptuously, but on a more domestic scale. Trajan walked to the wall and pressed a concealed button. "We must find you somewhere to sleep," he said, "and I'll order some food." It looked as if he was going to obey Frith then. For the moment, at any rate, she was to be treated as a guest, rather than as a captive or as a... Again, Sarah's mind refused to go on. A voice responded to his summons, a voice which filled the echoing spaces of the hall. "Is that you, Vice Chairman?" "Who else could it be, Odin?" snapped Trajan, the warts on his face riding the ripples. "I told Captain Radley you were still away." "Radley? What did he want?" "He's here now. The worried voice was interrupted by the strong, confident tones of a younger man. "Trajan, I'm coming in." "You can't go in there. Come back." But Captain Radley ignored the feeble protest. A door in the wall which Sarah had not even noticed, disguised as it was by the ornate carvings, slid open, and a tall young man dressed in a dark green uniform strode into the room, followed by a small, agitated man uttering feeble protests. "This is insufferable," said Trajan, his face flushing a deeper shade of purple. "You've really gone too far this time, Radley." "Is this Sarah Jane Smith?" "How did you know that?" Radley turned to Sarah. "Are you all right?" "Just about," answered Sarah. It looked as if the cavalry had arrived, even if he hadn't got a horse. "Good," said Radley. "If you would like to come with me." "The Presidential Guard has no jurisdiction in this sector," Trajan said. "I'd be within my rights to have you kicked out, literally." "I shouldn't advise you to try," said Radley. "I'm here on the direct orders of the President himself. Ready, Miss Smith?" "I certainly am." Trajan interposed himself between them. "Miss Smith stays here." The captain didn't even raise his voice. "Get out of the way," he said. Trajan's face was shaking and shivering as if agitated by a sudden squall of wind. He spoke as quietly as Radley, but the intensity of his anger was shaking his voice as well as his face. "You are of very little account in this society, Captain Radley. If you take my advice, you'll—" "Oof!" Sarah's cry of surprise was followed by a giggle of delight as Trajan fell to the floor, doubled up by a powerful short-arm jab from the captain. "Come on," he said, leading the way to the door where Odin was standing, pressed back against the wall. "Don't worry. I didn't hit him very hard. He's only winded." "That's a pity," said Sarah. Trajan struggled to get his voice. You young puppy. I'll make you sorry for that. I'll... But they had gone. And what could have been a useful warning to Captain Radley of a very real threat was heard only by the cowering servant.